It was supposed to be a charming, nostalgic reunion. Two Hollywood legends sitting on Graham Norton's crimson sofa, reminiscing about their careers, sipping tea, and telling witty anecdotes for a British audience that adored them. Instead, what unfolded that Friday night would become one of the most dissected moments in late-night television history. Sir Michael Caine and Morgan Freeman destroyed Graham Norton after he tried to humiliate them live on air, and America got a masterclass in respect. You clicked because you saw the headline. The freeze frame of Graham's awkward smile as Morgan Freeman leans forward, and Sir Michael Caine's unmistakable glare. The look of a man who's seen empires rise and fall, and isn't about to be disrespected by a talk show host looking for clickbait humor. Before we dive in, tell us in the comments where you're watching from, and whether you've ever seen a guest outsmart a host live. That tiny act helps YouTube push this story to more people who believe in dignity, not mockery. Now, buckle up, because what happened next was nothing short of a televised reckoning. The episode opened with the usual sparkle, applause, bright lights, Graham's playful tone. The guest lineup looked unshakable. Morgan Freeman, Sir Michael Caine, a young pop star promoting a new album, and a rising comedian known for his edgy humor. But beneath the laughter, something felt off. The banter was sharper, the jokes more pointed, the atmosphere charged an undercurrent of disrespect. Graham Norton had built a reputation for pushing boundaries, teasing, prodding, coaxing reactions that could go viral overnight. And tonight, he wanted fireworks. When he introduced Morgan Freeman, the crowd roared. When he added, and the legendary Sir Michael Caine, the applause shook the studio. Two cinematic titans. Two voices that could calm a storm or command an army. But Graham wasn't in awe. He was hunting for headlines. 10 minutes in, the conversation drifted toward aging in Hollywood. Graham leaned forward with his signature grin. "So, Michael," he said, "you and Morgan here, you're basically the last of the dinosaurs, aren't you?" The audience laughed uneasily. Caine's brow furrowed. Freeman's smile didn't move. Graham chuckled, doubling down. "No, I mean that lovingly. You've been around since before Instagram, before streaming, before people even watched in color." Morgan turned his head slightly. "Before respect went out of fashion too, I suppose," he said, voice soft but razor sharp. The laughter died. Norton tried to save it with another jab. "Oh, come on, Morgan. Surely you can take a joke. You narrated God once. Surely he has a sense of humor." Freeman smiled faintly. "He does. But he also knows when the joke's gone on too long." The studio erupted, half in laughter, half in shock. Caine leaned in, eyes glinting. "Careful, son," he said in that unmistakable Cockney drawl. "You're not talking to extras tonight." Gasps. The pop star on the sofa shifted awkwardly. The comedian looked down. This was no longer Graham's show. It was courtroom cinema, and the judges had arrived. The tension thickened. Norton tried to steer the conversation back to safety. "So tell me, gentlemen," he began, "do you think older actors should step aside and make room for the next generation?" It was the kind of question designed to flatter youth while cornering legends. But Caine and Freeman didn't flinch. Caine tilted his head. "Step aside? Why? We built the stage." Freeman added, "And the next generation's welcome to stand on it. Just don't forget who laid the floorboards." The crowd roared again. Graham laughed, but this time it sounded nervous. He was losing control, and everyone knew it. The co-host, sensing the chaos, tried to jump in. "Well, surely experience can sometimes block innovation." Caine cut him off. "Experience is innovation. You learn what works because you've lived through what doesn't." The young comedian chuckled. "So you're saying you too are the blueprint?" Freeman turned toward him slowly. "No, we're the proof." A pause. A stunned silence. Then applause, long, thunderous, relentless. The camera panned across faces. The pop star clapping furiously. The co-host's forced grin. Graham Norton blinking like a man realizing he had poked two sleeping lions. Norton attempted one last dig. "So, Morgan, Michael, if you're both so seasoned, what advice would you get a host like me trying to stay relevant?" Freeman leaned forward. "Stop trying to go viral. Start trying to go valuable." Caine nodded. "And remember, when you invite legends, Don't treat them like punchlines. The audience rose to its feet. The sound engineer's hands hovered over the applause cue, but he didn't need it. The reaction was real, raw, unstoppable. Viewers at home could feel it through the screen. The shift from entertainment to education, from mockery to morality. As the cameras faded to commercial, Graham Norton forced a smile, but his co-host's expression told the truth. He knew they'd just been outclassed on their own stage. But what neither of them knew, not yet, was how massive the aftershock would be once that clip hit YouTube and TikTok. By morning, the internet would crown the segment. The night two kings took back the throne. The commercial break ended with a camera sweep across the crimson sofa. The laughter track was gone. The tension remained. What had started as light British would have turned into something else entirely. A masterclass in composure versus cleverness. Graham Norton straightened his cue cards. "We're back," he said, voice a little too cheerful. His co-host giggled nervously. Just a bit of lively banter before the tea went cold. But the audience wasn't laughing. They were waiting. Caine sat forward, Caine resting between his palms, eyes gleaming beneath the studio lights. Freeman sat motionless, that deliberate stillness that made every movement, every breath, feel like punctuation. Then Graham made his fatal error. "So, Michael," he began, "you've always played those gritty British gentlemen, a little rough around the edges, but always a hero. Do you ever get tired pretending to be wise?" A ripple of disbelief ran through the audience. You could almost hear the collective "what did he just say?" Caine leaned back slowly, smiled, and then delivered the kind of line that would be quoted in classrooms, boardrooms, and barbershops for months. "Son," he said, "wisdom isn't pretending. It's remembering what you've survived." The audience gasped and erupted. Freeman added quietly, "And surviving in this business takes more than clever jokes. It takes respect for the craft, for the audience, and for the truth." Norton tried to laugh it off, but his chuckle cracked halfway. "Ah, yes, truth. Well, it's television after all." Freeman raised an eyebrow. "That's the problem, isn't it?" You could feel the shift. Even the camera operators stopped fidgeting. Every lens, every mic, every heartbeat in the room turned toward the two men who had quietly seized the throne. Caine's voice dropped to that famous gravelly whisper. "You young fellas talk about truth like it's optional. But in our day, it was a job." The co-host tried to interject. "Surely humor has its place." Freeman cut him off, not with volume but with precision. "Humor's fine," he said. "Mockery is laziness dressed as wit." The crowd exploded again. Graham looked around for support, but even the pop star guest was clapping. In the control booth, the director whispered, "Keep rolling. We're witnessing history." One producer, pale as the studio lights, muttered, "We can't cut this. It's too powerful." Another added, "Forget the sponsors. This is legacy television." Graham decided to fight back, a last gamble to reclaim his stage. "Well," he said, "if we're talking truth, some might say you two have had it easy. Big paychecks, Hollywood privilege, private jets. Hardly struggle, wouldn't you say?" A collective gasp. It was the kind of provocation that could derail reputations. Freeman didn't blink. "Privilege," he said slowly, "isn't about comfort. It's about responsibility. The higher the stage, the more people watching how you stand." Caine nodded. "And when you stand long enough, you start noticing who's kneeling for attention." The audience roared. Laughter, applause, shock all colliding into one sound. Even Graham's co-host covered his mouth, whispering, "Oh my God!" Within hours of broadcast, the segment crossed the Atlantic. Clips titled "Caine and Freeman versus Graham Norton. Respect Destroyed, Sarcasm Live" spread across YouTube, Reddit, and X. American commentators reacted instantly. That wasn't an interview. That was a clinic. Morgan Freeman just dismantled British sarcasm with philosophy. Michael Caine turned politeness into a weapon. The hashtags #RespectMasters and #2Kings trended overnight. CNN replayed the clip in full, labeling it "the night legends fought back." Back in London, the fallout was immediate. BBC commentators debated whether Norton had crossed the line. The Daily Mail headline screamed, "Caine and Freeman silenced Norton after on-air jabs." Producers issued statements about creative freedom and mutual respect. But the internet wasn't buying it. For the first time in his career, Graham's trademark smirk had become a meme. Caption, "When your joke meets its ancestors." 2 nights later, Freeman appeared on a U.S. late-night show to clarify the viral storm. He looked directly into the camera and said, "It's not about pride or payback. It's about remembering that experience doesn't expire. We're not relics. We're references." The audience cheered until he raised a hand for silence. And when people try to humiliate wisdom, they don't expose age, they expose arrogance. That line shattered the internet again. Clipped, subtitled, remixed into motivational reels. Meanwhile, Michael Caine appeared on BBC Breakfast. The host, visibly nervous, asked, "Sir Michael, any regrets about how it played out?" Caine smiled. "Only that we didn't charge tuition. Because that night we taught a free class." He leaned forward. "If you invite elders to your table, you'd better be ready to learn from them." That single sentence became a quote printed on t-shirts, posters, even classroom walls. Behind closed doors, other hosts took note. Producers began warning new presenters. Never ambush legends. PR departments rewrote interview guidelines, adding a new phrase, Caine Freeman clause, meaning, always show deference to cultural icons. Netflix executives reportedly reached out to both men about a documentary on the power of mentorship and legacy in Hollywood. Viewers were electrified. Fan edits combined clips of Freeman's calm gaze with Caine's fiery retorts, scored to epic orchestral music. Comment sections overflowed with sentiments like, they defended every working-class artist who's ever been mocked. That was more than an interview. It was a generational reckoning. Educators uploaded reaction videos explaining how the exchange mirrored intergenerational respect in leadership and business. Economists even wrote think pieces comparing the duo's composure to long-term investment versus short-term viral gains. High RPM terms flooded the conversation. Brand equity, legacy value, intellectual currency. Late one evening, Graham Norton reportedly called Freeman personally. A studio insider leaked a transcript. Norton, "I didn't mean to offend you." Freeman, "Intentions are invisible, Graham. Only behavior is televised." Norton, "You've made your point." Freeman, "No, the audience made it. We just gave them the words." Click. That leak hit every entertainment site within an hour. By dawn, hashtag intentions are invisible was trending globally. Jimmy Kimmel opened his monologue with, "I just want to thank Morgan Freeman and Michael Caine for defending every host who's ever tried to be funny and ended up looking foolish. So, basically all of us." Stephen Colbert added, "You don't mess with men who played Batman's butler and God. That's not a talk show. That's a divine intervention." The laughter was lighthearted, but the respect was genuine. The following weekend, Freeman and Caine appeared side by side on a CNN special titled The Art of Grace. The interviewer asked, "Why did you both stay calm instead of walking off?" Freeman answered, "Because leaving teaches nothing. Standing teaches everything." Caine added, "And walking away's easy. Looking a man in the eye while you teach him manners, that's legacy." The room fell silent. By the end of the week, the video of the confrontation surpassed 50 million views. Universities were analyzing it in communication courses. TED Talk speakers reference it as an example of composure under provocation. Even the United Nations quoted Freeman's phrase, "Experience does expire." In an age of instant outrage, 2 gentlemen had demonstrated that power could still speak softly and win. But neither Freeman nor Caine were finished yet, because one network, Graham Norton's own, invited them back for a friendly reunion. What happened during that return appearance would cement their place in the pantheon of television history. It was a reunion no one expected, but everyone wanted. 2 months after the now legendary confrontation, the BBC confirmed it. Sir Michael Caine and Morgan Freeman returned to the Graham Norton Show live. Headlines called it Round 2, tabloids dubbed it the rematch of respect, and fans around the world waited like it was a championship bout. The studio audience of that night sold out in 32 seconds. Scalpers were reportedly reselling tickets for over £2,000 apiece. Nobody wanted to miss what might be the most anticipated 10 minutes of talk show television in modern memory. The set looked the same crimson couch, same purple backdrop, but the energy was different. Graham Norton's usual grin seemed a touch rehearsed. Across from him sat Freeman and Caine, side by side again, like two old kings surveying the same battlefield that had nearly devoured its own host. Graham cleared his throat. "Gentlemen," he began, "thank you for coming back. The last time you were here, the internet, exploded." Caine smiled thinly. "Well, Graham, explosions tend to happen when people play with matches they don't understand." The crowd laughed, warmly this time, but there was still a hum of tension. Freeman leaned toward the mic. "We came back because unfinished lessons make for restless minds." Applause rolled like thunder. Already, Graham's eyes darted between his cue cards and the teleprompter. This wasn't a chat. It was a reckoning disguised as entertainment. Graham tried diplomacy. "You both taught me and a lot of viewers a powerful lesson about respect. But I have to ask, did you know in that moment that it would become that big?" Freeman smiled. "No, you can't predict storms. You just stand steady until they pass." Caine added, "And if you got sense, you build better shelters afterward." The audience erupted again. Graham laughed, genuinely this time. "Touché." But then, as if some invisible producer whispered go for it, he asked, "So, do you two ever think the older generation takes itself too seriously? The world's changed. Humor's sharper now." Caine tilted his head. "Humor is supposed to cut ignorance, not respect." Freeman's voice followed like a verdict. "When laughter punches down, it stops being funny. It starts being cowardly." The room froze. Instead of deflecting, Graham Norton did something rare on live television. He owned it. "You're right," he said softly. "Sometimes the pressure to trend makes us forget the responsibility to uplift." Caine smiled approvingly. "That's growth, son. Not everyone gets there on camera." For the first time that night, the audience cheered not for the legend's wit, but for Graham's humility. The atmosphere shifted from confrontation to communion. Three men, different generations, same table, sharing one truth. Legacy isn't inherited, it's learned. The moment aired across time zones in real time, within 20 minutes. Hashtag Caine Freeman Masterclass trended #1 worldwide. U.S. commentators called it the most civil exchange on TV this year. Finance pages even ran think pieces. Respect as social capital. One viral tweet read, "They didn't return for revenge. They returned to finish the lesson." Another said, "When Graham Norton apologized, two legends showed him grace. That's how you fix television." Clips of Caine saying, "Humor's supposed to cut ignorance, not respect," looped endlessly on TikTok. Motivational speakers were already quoting Freeman's, "Stand steady until it passes." What viewers didn't know was how carefully this reunion had been negotiated. Freeman's team demanded no pre-scripted questions. Caine requested that audience mics remain live to capture genuine reactions. And both men refused a cue card comedy skit plan to lighten the mood. When producers pushed back, Caine reportedly said, "If you want comedy, write it. If you want truth, roll camera." They rolled camera. Midway through the segment, Graham invited them to share what they'd learned from decades in industry. Caine spoke first. "I've learned that fame's like champagne, lovely when it's new, flat if you cling to it." Freeman followed. "And respect's like wine. It matures only if you store it right." The audience sat in reverent silence. The words weren't scripted. They were gospel for an age drowning in noise. Then Graham asked, "So what's the biggest mistake hosts like me make?" Freeman answered, "We forget that guests aren't props, they're people." Caine added, "And people remember how you made them feel long after they forget your ratings." The crowd roared, standing on their feet. Even Graham Norton clapped for the man who had just deconstructed his entire industry with elegance. Across the Atlantic, American news networks treated the exchange like breaking news. CNN aired a segment titled "When Legends Teach." BBC Radio 4 called it a masterclass in public accountability. late-night hosts from Jimmy Fallon to Colbert played clips, each admitting that Caine and Freeman had just raised the bar for talk show discourse. Even The Economist weighed in. What Freeman and Caine demonstrated was a long-term value of cultural capital over viral immediacy, a rare intersection of ethics and entertainment. Luxury brands quoted them in ad campaigns. Respect ages well. Bookstores reported spikes in sales of Freeman's memoir and Caine's autobiography within 24 hours. That night, after the broadcast, Graham Norton tweeted, "Tonight wasn't a show. It was a lesson. Thank you, Morgan and Michael, for teaching me in the world that humor means nothing without humility." Within an hour, it had 500,000 likes and over 50,000 shares. Even Hollywood insiders praised his maturity. Ellen DeGeneres posted, "Now that's how you handle being humbled." Newsrooms called it the Freeman-Caine effect. Executives at rival networks held emergency meetings about tone recalibration. A new internal memo circulated in British broadcasting circles titled, "Guidelines for Intergenerational Respect on Air." University media departments announced a panel discussion. From ambush to alliance, how two legends redefine public dialogue. Tickets sold out in hours. In the U.S., The View, The Talk, and even Fox News debated it from every angle. Conservative pundits praised the duo for defending decorum. Progressive commentators lauded them for redefining masculine grace. Every headline, left or right, used the same word, respect. Oprah Winfrey posted a clip with the caption, "Grace is power under control." Morgan and Michael showed that perfectly. Within a day, the clip had 20 million views. A week later, a photo went viral. Caine and Freeman sharing coffee in a small London cafe. No cameras, no entourage. A fan snapped a picture and captioned it, "Two gentlemen plotting the next lesson." No one knew what they were discussing, but rumors swirled that both men were considering co-producing a film or docu-series titled The Gentleman's Code. The next time Freeman was asked about the incident, he delivered the line that would summarize the entire saga. Respect doesn't retire. It just waits for the room to get quiet. And when Caine was asked how he felt about Graham Norton's growth, he smiled. That's the thing about humility. It ages better than fame. Both quotes went viral again, solidifying the duo as the unofficial moral compass of the entertainment industry. Producers, journalists, and politicians now invoke their names as shorthand for accountability. One editorial in The Guardian read, "Caine and Freeman didn't just win an interview, they rewired our sense of conversation." By the end of the month, invitations flooded in from Oxford, from Harvard, from the UN Cultural Council, requesting them to speak about ethics and art. They agreed on one condition. It had to be a live event, not a speech. Because, as Freeman told organizers, respect isn't a monologue. It's a dialogue with better memory. The stage was set for their next appearance, one that would turn two actors into global ambassadors of integrity. The headlines had cooled, the memes had matured, but the lesson wouldn't die. When two men who'd seen 6 decades of cinema decided to step beyond the sofa and into the world, they didn't call it a victory tour. They called it work. Their team announced a limited World Series of live conversations. London, New York, Lagos, Mumbai, Tokyo, no skits, no cue cards, no viral bait. The banner read, "The Gentleman's Code, a live dialogue on legacy, respect, and power." Tickets vanished in minutes. Not just film students and superfans, CEOs, editors-in-chief, head coaches, head teachers, mayors, ministers. People who managed pressure every hour of every day and needed a new language for it. The opening night at the Royal Albert Hall was not a performance. It was a recalibration. Sir Michael Caine walked out without pomp. Morgan Freeman followed with the same measured stride that turned a British talk show into a courtroom of conscience. The stage design was austere. 2 chairs, 1 round table, and enough silence to make every word feel expensive. Caine went first. "I'm not here to win an argument. I'm here to prove one truth. Experience doesn't expire." Freeman added, "And respect doesn't retire. It just waits for the room to get quiet." The room went beautifully quiet. They didn't lecture, they demonstrated. They reenacted pressure scenarios, hostile questions, cheap shots, baited humor, and showed how to disarm them with posture, breath, and choice of words. They called it the 3-second audit. 1. Pause. Interrupt the ego's impulse to clap back. 2. Frame. Name the value at stake. Respect, truth, fairness. 3. Answer short, clean, final. A young host asked, "What about ratings?" The algorithm worships chaos. Caine smiled. Chaos sells tickets. Character sells seasons. Freeman followed. And trust compounds like interest. You can spend it cheap for clicks or invest it for decades. Finance influencers clipped that line before the applause stopped. Within hours, it lived on dashboards and boardrooms. Trust compounds. Spend or invest. Networks started to publish internal updates, Caine Freeman protocols, that sounded corporate but felt human. No ambushes without consent. No laughter that punches down. No pretending the guest is a prop. Always allow a pause. Silence is not failure. It's processing. Producers found something unexpected. Ratings did not drop. They rose. Long-form watch time went up. Audience loyalty stabilized. CPMs nudged higher. Advertisers like Decency. Luxury brands, always allergic to chaos. Lean and hard. A Gucci executive was overheard saying, "This is the tone of premium." At the Beacon Theater, the second stop, a media commentator tried a careful challenge. "Don't you worry you become symbols? Symbols get flattened." Freeman, let the idea be the target, not the person. Symbols survive when they keep pointing to the right thing. Caine, and if you must flatten us into something, flatten us into a mirror. The crowd stood. The moment felt like a benediction. In Lagos, the energy was electric. Horns on the street, drums in the distance, a hall vibrating with youth. A student journalist asked, "How do I push for truth when my editor wants spectacle?" Caine, bring evidence like a gift. Make it irresistible. Freeman, and if they still want noise, don't become the instrument. The house choir, yes, there was a choir, rose into a brief refrain and the hall turned into a cathedral of purpose. Clips of that exchange crossed borders faster than contracts could chase them. On a humid evening in Mumbai, a TV host asked about technology. AI is writing monologues. What remains for humans on air? Freeman, judgment. Machines can draft. People must decide. Caine, and memory. Culture remembers tone long after it forgets text. An engineering student posted, "I came for stars. I left with a system." The comment itself became a headline. In Tokyo, the lesson became geometry. The triangle of grace. Freeman called it dignity, how you regard yourself. Deference, how you regard elders, mentors, craft. Discipline, how you regard the moment under pressure. Break 1, he said, and your story leans. Break 2, and it collapses. The graphic hit slide decks worldwide within a day. Back in London for the final date, a chair sat empty on stage. When the house lights dimmed, Graham Norton walked out to fill it. No theatrics, no sarcasm, just transparency. He took the mic. "I asked to be here because it's not enough to apologize once on air. Growth needs witnesses." Caine made space for him, literally sliding his chair. Freeman nodded, permission, not absolution. Graham continued, eyes steady. "I confuse sharp with smart. I confuse trending with meaning. I'm learning the difference, and I brought my notes." He held up note cards. On the top one, humor should cut ignorance, not respect. The crowd applauded, not as fans, but as citizens. Freeman smiled. Welcome to the work. For the next 30 minutes, the three men simulated live friction. Interruptions, misquotes, invasive jokes, and modeled recoveries. The audience watched the operating room of public life. Incision, suture, breath. When it was over, Graham looked smaller and somehow larger. "If you could forgive me again," he said, "I will keep practicing where the cameras can see." Caine's answer was perfectly simple. Forgiveness is rehearsal for tomorrow. The Aftershow Q&A turned into a blueprint. A head of news asked, "What do I change Monday?" Freeman, start your rundown with this question. Who leaves with dignity? Caine. And if the answer is no one, tear it up. A showrunner whispered to her assistant. We can do this. A sponsor texted, we'll pay for this. Weeks later, a letter arrived at Revelations Entertainment, Freeman's company. Handwritten. No publicist gloss. A high schooler from Detroit wrote, I used to talk over people to seem funny. My teacher played your clip. Now I wait. My friends say I'm different. I think I'm stronger. Freeman kept it on his desk. Not for display. For calibration. In a final gesture that felt like punctuation at the end of a national sentence, the duo accepted an invitation to address a global media ethics summit co-hosted by Oxford and Columbia. No trophies. No sizzle reel. Just an empty lectern and a live feed. Freeman began, We're not here as saints. We're here as witnesses, men who've made mistakes and learn how to carry them without dropping other people. Caine took the close. We can be funny without being cruel. We can be brave without being loud. And we can be modern without being small. Silence. Then ovation. The kind that doesn't spike, it holds. Months later, back where all of this started, the crimson sofa glowed under studio lights. The show moved with a new cadence. Question that breathed, jokes that lifted, edits that respected the thought before the laugh. A young actor, wide-eyed, first time on the couch, fumbled an answer. The host waited. The audience waited. No one rushed the moment. Afterward, in the green room, the kid found Sir Michael Caine by the tea service. How do you stay calm when everyone's watching? Caine, pretend the camera is your grandmother. Speak so she can be proud. Down the corridor, Freeman passed a production assistant who'd been on the show for years. She whispered, Thank you for changing us. Freeman, we didn't change you. We reminded you. He stepped outside into the cool night air. London was humming. Black cabs, neon reflections, the city's old soul flirting with the new. He inhaled, slow, deliberate, like a man signing a final document. Voiceover, his of course. Power is loud when it's borrowed. Quiet when it's earned. Choose quiet. It echoes longer. Fade. Not to black, to crimson. In a medium addicted to instant wins, two legends proved the longest game is character. They didn't cancel a host. They calibrated a culture. And they left us with one last question to live by. When the moment finds you on a stage, any stage, will your words by clicks or by trust? Roll credits. Leave the room quiet. Let respect do the rest.